But the love which we are going to talk about, it's a pure love. It's a love based on respect, mutual respect. About love which is based on religion. And that's what makes the difference between the sense of love in Muslim sense and other than Muslims. Brothers and sisters, I don't have much time to give introductions, but I have to mention two things before I start. One, that love in Islam is not a relationship based on culture or just because it's a natural feeling, this love between the two parties or this relationship. Not only love connected them together. There's more farther step than that. Love or loving is the foundation for any marriage. But also there is other pillars and other foundation for this marriage to be successful and solid. That this love or this marriage is a religious relationship. Therefore the Prophet ﷺ said, اتقوا الله في النساء فإنكم استحللتم فرجهن بكلمة الله. The Prophet ﷺ said, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you deal with women, because they only became lawful for you to have them, to sleep with them, to be with them, only by Allah, by Allah's words. It's not by anything else. This woman just 5 minutes ago, you're not allowed to touch, you're not allowed to see me. But now after you confirm the marriage, everything is lawful between you and her, or between you and him. It's just the words when the Shaykh pronounced that you are wife and husband. It's by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's law and by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's words. So, therefore Islam looked at the husband in a very high status, and looked to the wife also in a very high status. As a matter of fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَلَهُنَّ مِثْلُ الَّذِي عَلَيْهِنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the rights mutual between both parties. There is rights the husband has to provide, the wife she also has to provide. Both parties, they have something to do. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam once walked in, he was walking in Medina, and he found sallallahu alayhi wa sallam 2 camels fighting. Then when they saw the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, if you have seen the camels, they are very huge. When they saw the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, both camels stopped and they prostrate themselves for Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Then when the Sahaba saw that, it's one of the Prophet miracles. Mu'adh radiyallahu anhu, he couldn't control himself. He fell down sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He fell down before the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, prostrating to him. Made sujood to the Prophet. Then Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam held him up. He said, no, you're not allowed to prostrate yourself for anybody other than Allah. If there is somebody can do that, it will be the woman for her husband. If there is somebody, he will be allowed to prostrate himself for somebody, for a human being, it will be the wife for her husband. Because he has a very high status, or in a very high status, the husband. The Prophet honored him to that extent, even though she is not allowed to do that. In the other hand, the Prophet ﷺ said, the best thing you can ever have in your home, a good wife, or righteous wife. النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم جعل خير ما تكنز في البيوت المرأة الصالحة. The best thing, the Prophet ﷺ said, the best thing among this dunya you can ever have is your wife. He said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, by marrying, the marriage will complete half of your religion. Didn't you see that all the prophets, except Jesus alayhi salam, they all get married? All the prophets has wives. Every prophet, except Jesus, because he been raised to heavens early, when he was in 30. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم قال حبب إلي من دنياكم الطيب والنساء. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned that if there is something he loved most in this dunya, what he loved most from this worldly life is his wives, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, and the perfume. That's what he loved most, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Ibrahim alayhi salam, he loved Hajar so much. Even in some narrations of the narration of the people of book, he used to go from Palestine to Mecca to see her daily by al-Buraq. كان يركب لها البراق كل يوم ليراها. Just to see her. He missed her so much. You will see the Prophet ﷺ, how much he loved his wife sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Marriage is something been very high recommended in Islam. As a matter of fact, it's not allowed for anybody to say, I'm not going to marry. Male or female. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, if I have one night left in this dunya, I will not die as a bachelor. I will rather die as a married person. Just to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he has a wife, not a bachelor. He said that, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. There is a lot of ahadith, a lot of verses in the Quran and some of the Prophet ﷺ and ahadith to show you that marriage is a very important matter in Islam. And today I'm not supposed to talk about the marriage in Islam, but I will talk to you about some stories. And the problem is stories takes time. Because it's a story. So we just say whatever we can, and we will maybe say it in another lecture or something. I was thinking, should I classify this lecture or just tell you the stories and you can understand or pick up the lessons from the stories? And this is basically what I want you to do. I want you to think about the Prophet ﷺ life, because really I want you to share the same feeling I had when I was reading in this subject. I really, all of a sudden I found myself, it's 4:35. And my lecture is 6, and I was home. Reading. Even I read the stories before, but I'm reading it again, preparing for the lecture. I found myself in other world. Really, I went back 1400 years ago with the Prophet ﷺ, with his family and in his houses sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. To show that the Prophet ﷺ was a romantic in a sense, he's a loving person, and he was sallallahu alayhi wa sallam a person who care, who share, who show his love sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We'll see that the Prophet ﷺ always will show his love to his wife sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Before that, I forgot, I was supposed to mention one more point before we start. The Prophet ﷺ had, when he passed away, 9 wives. And maybe this is, for some of you, if there is any non-Muslim, be surprised, or new Muslims be surprised. And some Muslims will be shocked. 9, yes, when he passed away, he had 9 wives, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. How many wives he had? He had 13, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and there is more different opinion about the number. But why the Prophet ﷺ had this large number of women? The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had this larger number of women for reasons. Not like the kuffar saying, because he loved sex so much, so he had 9 wives. No. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam married 9 wives for great reasons, and there is a great wisdom behind that. Some of this wisdom, there is more than 18 wisdom, the scholars mention it. But the most important thing, just to mention very quickly, so you can understand why the Prophet ﷺ has wives. You don't surprise when we said that. First, the Prophet ﷺ's life cannot, his personal life, cannot be covered with one woman, with one wife. Because she will forget. She will forget. Can you imagine, let's say he married only Aisha. If Aisha, she cannot remember everything the Prophet used to do in his house. And everything he used to do is in his house, it is something for part of the deen, we copying him. So we need at least a number of people who witness that, the personal life, or the personal thing the Prophet ﷺ used to do in his house, so they can narrate these things to us, so we'll be sure that's what the Prophet ﷺ used to do. Therefore, he has 9, and all of them, they narrated what the Prophet ﷺ used to do in the night, in the house, how he used to pray in the night, how he used to eat, how he used to sleep.